Hello everyone and welcome to another Read Embry tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about the advantages of shooting RAW versus JPG, especially for beginners. As always, I have included a link in the description to download these files so you can either work along with me or just check them out later at your own convenience. We are going to be tackling a few different issues today that I hear from beginner photographers about why they're not converting over to RAW and only shooting in JPEG. I would say number one, they're scared of it and they think it's really complicated and difficult to use, and nothing could be further from the truth. And the next one that I hear most commonly, they don't understand why the file size for a RAW image has to be so much larger than a JPEG. As you can see here on my screen, the JPGs clock in at a whopping 3.9 megabytes. And over here on the left, you can see in the Nikon NEF file, which stands for Nikon's Electronic Format, which is Nikon's camera raw format, that the file is actually 31.5 megabytes. That's almost 10 times larger for a single image. And we'll get into why that's important in a little bit. And the third thing that I feel is really confusing to a lot of beginner photographers are actual file sizes and what they mean. So I'm just going to quickly break down file sizes and how they relate to one another. Now, megabytes are probably the most common one that you're going to be seeing. There are 1,000 megabytes in a gigabyte, and there are 1,000 gigabytes in a terabyte. So if we quickly do the math, so 1,000 megabytes times 1,000 gigabytes equals 1 terabyte. Now, I'm going to times that by 4. Because we are going to give an example of a 4 terabyte hard drive, which is going to give us 4 million megabytes. Now, if you take that number and divide it by 31.5, which was the size of our RAW file, it gives you a number of 126,984 individual full-size RAW images that you can fit on a 4 terabyte hard drive. That is a substantial amount of work that you can put on one hard drive for not that big of an investment. So the amount that you choose to invest in your hard drive is completely up to you, but I have found some really affordable options on Amazon lately. Now, I will say very quickly that I am not supported by Amazon or any of the products that I'm showing you. I have used them and I enjoy them personally, so these are what I will suggest for you. Some of the things that I look at and why I think this one in particular is a good option is because it's very small, it's really portable, and it does not require an external power device. That is huge for me. You just plug it into the USB port of whatever computer that you're using and it powers it through that. They are really simple. You can just take them anywhere and they are a really great option. So this is the one if I were starting out, and actually this is the one that I'm going to be purchasing here in a little bit because it kind of fits every need that I have at the moment. I'll be providing a link to this specific one in the description below, and that's my 2 cents about that. So now we're going to be talking about the practical visual reasons behind shooting RAW and over JPG. So if we go ahead and we open Bridge, I have a series of files here that I just shot that are extremely underexposed, all of which have different ISO settings. So what you do is you click the first image, hold down Shift, and click the last image in the series that you want to open in RAW. Then you can right click on any of them and hit Open in Camera RAW, which is a really great feature. So now this is the RAW editing window from Adobe. And as these thumbnails and previews load on this background, we're going to see that we have a heavily underexposed image. So an image like this can occur frequently, especially when you're starting out or even intermediate, starting out at jobs like weddings, which are really bad to get an image like this with a wedding. But if you shot RAW, there might still be hope for you. We're going to figure out how far we can push an image like this right now. Okay, we are going to select all of these at the same time, the exact same way that we just did in bridge. So you'll select your top one, and it is going to be the one that's showing in here, regardless of how many you have selected. The first one that you select will be the one that shows up in this window, but I do want the 100 ISO image to show in this finder as we're going. And we're doing that because we want every single edit that we make on this side of the computer to be reflected in every single one of these at the same time, so we get the exact same adjustment. So we're going to start out in the viewfinder with the 100 ISO NEF. So if you shot this at 100 ISO and in RAW, let's see how far we can push this thing. So already, detail that you thought might be completely lost. And here we have zero grain for the most part. There's a little bit of artifacting over here. And again, I've included all of these files in the project file for you to follow along or play with and kind of get a feel for what the different ISOs are going to do in this kind of an extreme situation. But where this image is really going to come back out is by trying to fix the color temperature. And look at that. That's insane. You pretty much would have no idea where this image started out at. There's just a little tiny bit of grain showing up back here that isn't really gonna bother anybody, especially considering where this image started. Okay, now this is kind of the best case scenario file for this. We're shot in RAW and we shot at 100 ISO. But let's check out the other thumbnails and see what we're doing. 100 ISO JPG now looks like this, okay? That is a pretty major difference that we are seeing here. The white balance, having the white balance so far off in such a bad lighting condition that we set up for it already is having really massive effects on this. The lightness and the highlights can come down a little bit and the shadows can come up, but you've got, you see what just happened here? There's no pushing, there's no pulling. Basically, whatever you shoot a JPG file at is what you're going to be stuck with in post. And this is really the main point that I'm trying to make with this. Yeah, you can put it back into the yellow and it looks smoother and a little bit better, but this is still a horrible image. Like, the white balance is so far off, and especially in comparison to the same image shot with RAW, that's kind of blowing my mind. So at 100 ISO, we're already getting effects like these. So let's check out the 200 ISO RAW file. So even at 200 ISO with those same settings as the first one, we are getting quite a bit more grain up in here. But again, this isn't really that big of a deal considering this image is still salvageable, is what I'm trying to go for. The 200 ISO JPG getting really bad up in here and all around here. And the color, again, the main issue is that you can't fix the color in this image. It is just stuck where it's at. So now we're going to move on to the 800 ISO RAW image, and yes, this is starting to fall apart. We can see you're getting a lot of blue noise down here, and if you turn this for fun into a black and white, where is my, here we go, saturation. If you turn this into a black and white, it becomes a little bit less distracting because the color noise isn't quite there. But yeah, you can see the grain is really starting to come out at 800 ISO, but it's still technically a usable file. You could probably smooth a lot of this out in post and, you know, work your magic if you really know how to use Photoshop. But again, we're talking about beginners for the most part here. 800 ISO JPG at the same settings. Yeah. Here's the 1600 ISO for the RAW. And even here. Yeah, you're approaching totally useless on both of these. But we had shot at 1600 ISO. And I mean, I'm not even going to play with this. I think you guys get the point. The higher your ISO gets, you can probably still turn this into some kind of art project or something at this point. But yeah, and then finally, that was the 3200 ISO RAW file. You're getting all kinds of artifacting, and pixels are just blowing out everywhere and having major issues. My camera's a little bit old, so and Photoshop fixes them. I forgot about that. Anyway, this is 3200 ISO RAW file, and then finally we land on the 3200 ISO JPG. So, you know, 3200 JPG from 100 JPG, yeah, there's a big difference, but this is still worse to me than the 1600 ISO RAW file, in my personal opinion. Yeah, there, you still have more detail in here, and there's less color artifacting, and you can still fix this image. So we are actually going to hit done. So another moral, I guess, of the story is if you have a really low lighting condition and you're shooting RAW, is kind of try to stay as low in your ISO as you can, even if your thumbnail looks like this. So in ideal conditions, if you shoot a regular NEF with a regular exposure with 100 ISO, you can get an image that edits out something like this. I just took these out earlier and played around with them for about 5 minutes. But okay, so I hope you guys learned today a little bit about the practical, real-world reason why you should be shooting in RAW as opposed to JPEG. It's not a snooty thing, it's not a buzzword thing. It has a real, live, practical reason to be used in everyday workflows for photography. As always, if you guys learned something today and you liked what you saw, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me out. I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers so that my channel can become official on YouTube. I appreciate you guys watching the entire video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.